number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Episode 269. Happy Friday, happy whatever day you are listening to us, and thank you for doing such. Today's guest, Giri of Waxopolis.com. We're going to learn all about that site through Giri. It's your kind of one-stop shop for everything hobby related. Really makes it easy to navigate through the hobby to almost anything. We're going to talk about where the idea came from, what he's doing with the site, how it's going to get better in the future. He's a collector as well, so we're going to chop up some hobby with Giri as well. And I got to meet him at this year's National, and said he listened to the show and told me what he was doing and working on. And I said, hey, let's let more people know about this. So Waxopolis.com, but we're gonna talk about that and other topics as well. So we're gonna take a quick 30-second break, and then we'll get the show started.
Iron Sports Cards is your number one source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
All right, happy to talk to my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line here at Sports Card Nation. I got to meet this gentleman at this year's National in Chicago. And so without further ado, we're going to talk about what he does. He's got a YouTube channel, but he's also got an awesome website that I've seen, and really kind of a one-stop shop for everything in the hobby. So I want to welcome Giri Cherukuri to the show. I hope I didn't kill that name too much.
No, you did very good.
Okay, all right. Like I told you even before we started recording, Giri, I try to get I'm a stickler for trying to get people's names right. So yours is a little trickier. Your degree of difficulty is a little bit more difficult, but thankfully I didn't kill it too badly. But I got to talk with you at this year's National, and you gave me a business card. Checked out your site as well. We're going to talk about that. But you also collect cards as well. Kind of, it's the baseline. First time on the podcast. Kind of how you got in the hobby, what you collect, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, John.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, so basically, I'm the classic case of the kid who collected baseball cards, and then when I collected throughout the 80s, mainly baseball cards, and then when I went off to college, then I kind of stopped for a very long time, and then when the pandemic hit, I heard about the baseball cards and sports cards being hot and everything, and dug out some of my old cards and then got back into it. So I didn't get on right at the beginning of the pandemic, but maybe like August, September time period, I heard news articles and things like cards are back and cards are hot and everything, and kind of jumped on there. And then when I got back into it, the world was so much different than when I remember as a kid. All these shiny cards, what's a refractor, numbered cards, grading, all of these things, I had to learn. So it was a big change, but again, it was very familiar, and now I stick to mainly vintage cards right now.
Smart man, if I may say so myself. You mentioned a lot of shiny, and sometimes it can be daunting, especially if, like you said, you kind of left and then came back. And vintage, I set up at shows, Gary, so I do carry both vintage and modern, ultra modern, but my heart's really in vintage, right? Because, growing up and being in the hobby 40 something years now, as crazy as that does sound. That's sort of where I lean, and for other reasons that I've talked about on the show, right? You just
Yeah.
what's been made has been made. It's out there. Sure, there's some finds here and there where someone will find like an unopened wax fine or some cards in an attic and that sort of thing. But the majority of what has survived is already been sort of located, found, or kept or collected, and there's something to be said about that. We're going into a different phase, as you well know, with Fanatics, taking over about 75% of the hobby here when the licensing fully goes into their hands. And so a little different than the hobby we each grew up in, to say the least, as you said. Let's get into sort of the site itself, right? Waxopolis.com. I've been there numerous times. It's a great sort of like, hey, I need to, how do I get to the grading card companies? You have podcasts, including this one listed on there, the card company. I mean, anything that's hobby related can probably be found there. Kind of talk about, how you came up with it, like what was the wherewithal to start that website, and and you did and you're still adding to it.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress. It's not, and it probably always will be, just because the hobby's still growing almost by the day. Just kind of where that came from for you.
Yeah, so like back to your first question, I was a decent collector as a kid. I started as a 7-year-old kid. My first pack of cards was a 1978 pack of baseball cards. And then I collected all the way through the junk wax era, and then kind of stopped in the early 90s. But back then, basically all you had was Topps flagship. That was the only set. And then you got Fleer and Donruss, and then a little bit of Upper Deck and things. And so when I got back into the hobby in late 2020, it was so different that I didn't know. I thought I was a decent collector, but there's so much I did not know by that time. I sort of knew there was grading. I had no idea what a breaker was. I didn't know what refractor cards were, numbered cards, things like that. So I had a lot of catching up to do and a lot of learning to do. And so when I was trying to do that, I was trying to find out these things. And now in the modern world, you go to YouTube channels, you look for podcasts. And I was like looking for some podcasts, and it was sort of hard to find. I couldn't, I'd search sports cards, search this and that. And in fact, this was one of the first podcasts I did find when I was checking out Spotify or whatever. And then YouTube, same thing. It's kind of hard to find YouTube channels. And so I was just mulling it over for the last couple of years, thinking we should have a resource, we should have a hub. So new and old people, they know all the various companies that are out there that do these things. And so I just had it in my back of my head, thinking about it, and wanted to think up a good name. And so I basically, by the way, I started the site in early of 2023, like in April of 2023, and just hit me Waxopolis. I mean, obviously the name wax harkens back to the vintage wax packs, and then Opolis meaning the city of. So Waxopolis, I thought that is a great name. And then technology-wise, I figured out a way to enter all these companies and YouTube creators and all these content creators and put it all in a site. So it just kind of all came together, and hopefully it's going to be very useful for people.
Yeah, and I'm not being a salesman here, Gary. Like it is really detailed. I mean, you have breakers listed, and a lot of hobby resources are there. It's a great resource, like you said, for someone who maybe is new and doesn't know where to start. It's a good starting point. Even if you're not new and you just, hey, I want to bookmark one page that I can go. It's like the Google of the hobby, right? You can go to Google, but you can bookmark waxopolis.com and just go right there, and boom, all the links are right on one page. You don't have to really necessarily even type a search term in. They're right there. Did you know what you wanted to list on that, or did you kind of like as you built the site, you're like, I'm going to add breakers, I'm going to add grading companies? How did that process work?
Yeah, some of both. Like you said, Googling kind of works, but it's still hard. You can't just Google a search term. So I wanted to create a curated website, curated categories, and it's just categories are growing as I think about it. And like one good example is auction houses. Auction houses. Everyone heard of PWCC, Golden, eBay, things like that. But as I was doing the research for the website and looking up all the stuff, I found out there's 33 auction houses that do sports cards. And so there's no way you would have been able to find all of that just doing a Google search term. And so I have all 33 auction houses all listed there. And then another feature of the site is that you can directly click and then click right to their website. And if you look at it on a phone, you can click and it'll go directly to Instagram. It'll open up your Instagram app and go to their Instagram page. You click on their Twitter handle, it'll open up your Twitter and go to their Twitter page, Facebook page, all of that stuff. So like you said, it's definitely a work in progress, and I want to make it better and better over time.
Well, like I said, it's already pretty good. And, I meant even just from the standpoint when we get a new company, a new podcast, a new selling platform, that sort of thing, just to update it. But it's really, you covered a lot of the bases. Do you have a tech background, or is this something you kind of learned as you went along?
I've always been interested in computers and tech and stuff. Professionally, I've never done any tech things, but I was always interested in computers. Interesting you say that. I remember back when I was, 12-year-old or 13-year-old, I had a spreadsheet database where I type in all my 1983 Topps cards and put in all the prices off the Beckett and things like that. So I guess I have a little bit of interest and background, but yeah, nothing professionally.
Well, it's well done. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but definitely urge people to check it out, bookmark it. As far as like future plans for the site, I don't want you to give away any trade secrets or I mean, is it something you wanted to make money or be profitable, or is it just you're doing it out of, you just want to help others, or both? Obviously, it can be both too.
Yeah, right now I just want to help others and be a resource for everyone, both old collectors and new collectors, and just make it useful and give back to the hobby community. That's what I really want to do. Down the line, who knows what will happen, but right now I just want it to be useful, and I just want to keep on building it out and make it more and more comprehensive. And it's also another important thing is just to bring light to all the various people in the community. For example, I have card shops in there, and I have only about 50, 60 different card shops, local card shops, but there's hundreds and thousands of card shops around the country. And so future plans is, build out that part of the thing so you can go directly there, and say you're traveling to Denver, Colorado, and you just go on the site and it'll show you all the card shops in Denver. I've tried that where in Google, and it's not as easy as you'd think to find, let's say, all the card shops in Denver. So that's one area of future growth is that. And the other one is card show calendars. I think you've probably had lots of different guests on your podcast. People always want to create a good card show calendar where you can just log on and find where the shows are, but some reason it just doesn't exist. I mean, there's a few sites out there, but nothing like really comprehensive. I mean, what do you think, John?
No, I mean, SCD, I write for Sports Collectors Digest. They have one, but you make a great point here, Giri, because, it was easier to do back in the day when there was far less shows. Now there's a lot more shows. And it's not your fault or SCD or anyone else that does a show calendar. Some of these promoters don't know about to list.
Yeah.
Hey, I can put my show on this site. I do a monthly show in Watertown, New York, which is about an hour north of me here in Syracuse. And I assumed he was kind of listed on these show calendars. And when I looked to see if his show was, it wasn't.
So I'm going to have a conversation with the promoter. I won't mention his name. I don't want to, throw him, but I'm going to mention like, hey, you need to get on these counters. You need to contact Giri at Waxopolis and get your show listed on his website and that sort of thing. So I think it's more on the promoters than the publications or your site, Giri.
Yeah.
It's not you guys do it. I think sometimes it's promoters not knowing that these resources are available to them and not taking advantage of that landscape. And so, like I said, it was easier to do back in the day when I think there was less shows. And then obviously we know during the pandemic shows kind of shut down, obviously. Yeah. And now that they're back up, I think promoters are slow to realize like, hey, I can utilize these resources. And listen, attendance at shows has been tremendous. And so I think sometimes, we're all guilty of that a little bit, myself and Ku, right? We sort of get complacent or restless. Hey, I'm doing well. Like, I don't need to like work any harder, or I don't need to do it. People know about it. But there's still more resources available to get the word out there to make it even potentially bigger and better. Even if it's already doing well, right? It could be even doing better. And so it's something I'm going to talk about, like I said, with the show I mentioned in Watertown, New York, talking to that gentleman to get him to list his show. And it's doing pretty good. It's a smaller show. And that, especially on a smaller show, Giri, I think the more advertising or the word you can get out there, the better off your show could be. And so, obviously a show like the National or some of these big regional shows, many people know about them already. But a lot of these local or regional shows can benefit. You make another great point. It's a question I get a lot myself when you go to, people travel, right, for business. Hey, I'm going to be in the city. I've never been there. I'm a collector. What stores are there where I can check out on my downtime or after my work's done? I get a lot of that here in Syracuse, like people who know I'm from Syracuse. Hey, what stores do you have in Syracuse, John? I'm actually coming to Syracuse. I'd love to meet you, but also what stores might I like, peruse? And so I think that would be a great resource to have where you can search literally either by zip code or city or major city and then know what shops are in your area. I think, Google doesn't tell the whole story, right? And you have, with Waxopolis, you have a site that's literally just hobby dedicated. And so the more info you get on there, and you've done, like I said, it's already a great resource, but the more stuff you add to it, it just becomes more of a one-stop shop. And kudos to you, right, to have the wherewithal to build it, to build it up. And it's not as probably easy as you make it look, but it's a nice resource to have. And everything you add to it will be even better, right, as the site grows. And that's a question I get a lot. Hey, I'm coming to the area. What, I'm going to Binghamton, and I'm while I might not be super far from Binghamton, I'm not from, but I don't know all the shops. So if they can get themselves listed there, I can say, hey, go to this site. You'll find all the stores in all these areas. And that's just to be a great resource. And even for future business trips, chances are if you're traveling now on business, they're going to be somewhere else at some other point as well. And it'll just be a great resource. It's nice to hear you, hey, I'm doing this because I want to help people, right? And there's nothing wrong with being profitable, and but sometimes that's really the sole reason for things. And again, that's not illegal or a crime, but you're in your case, you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart to help fellow collectors. Our backgrounds are very similar. You said you got your start in '78. I got with Topps Baseball. I got my start 1 year later we were both 7. I was 7 in 1979 and it was 79 Topps Baseball. That's to blame for this, 44 years later. But so we have similar backgrounds there, and it can be daunting. I never really left. I kind of hit pause for 3-4 years at one time when my son was little. But had I taken a longer pause, the hobby can be daunting. And so any resource that can make the terrain easier to navigate is, I'm sure, welcomed by most, right? And
Yeah.
important too, because I don't, some people will list, breaking sites. Some people will list auction sites. Some people will list just podcasts. You're trying to do all of that in one place.
Yeah, be
And there's
comprehensive.
yeah, and I think that's important to know. People will focus on one niche, but you're trying to focus on everything that's related to the hobby. I can speak for this show. I'm glad to be listed on there. And that will be my next question for you too, Giri, is do people reach out, whether it be a breaker, a podcast, a card store, a business? Do people reach out and say, hey, I'm not on there, can you put me on there? And the reverse of that, do you ever get someone that says, hey, I don't want to, I don't know why, it's kind of
Yes.
silly, but listen, I appreciate it, but I don't want to be publicized. You get both of those?
I get a few people reaching out to me. I'm still trying to get the word out about the site and everything, so I don't get a lot of people inbound, but I do have a email address, suggestions@waxopolis.com. Anyone could feel free to tell me about your site, your organization, everything, and I'd be glad to add it. And the thing about wanting to be taken off the site, no, I haven't had that yet, but I wouldn't doubt it if one day someone does something like that. I don't understand it, but for some reason, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me, but luckily it hasn't happened yet. So
yeah, and hopefully it doesn't. I mean, it would be a kind of a goofy thing. Sometimes people feel like, hey, you didn't ask me.
Yeah.
It'll be one of those type deals instead of like, hey, you're getting free publicity, like enjoy it. You're not costing you anything. But people can be fuddy-duddies sometimes. So maybe down the line that will actually happen. And you know what? That'll be on them. They don't want, they don't want the free pub. Then so be it, I guess. But
What I'm trying to do is, for a lot of companies, I'm trying to put in the logos. Put the logos on there so they become familiar and people will know that. And like I said, someone may come down the line and say, I'm stealing their logo or something, but I'm not stealing anything. I'm just,
you're not stealing. You're not using it and saying you're them. You're just, if anything, you're, like you said, you're redirecting them to their social media page or website. So
yeah,
people can be funny sometimes. And I see it too. But so be it. If that happens, they'll lose. They don't get the free. They don't get the free pub. I thank you for us being listed there, and appreciate that. I'm going to put the site in our show notes as well, Giri, so
thank you.
people can see it. Or if someone maybe has, whether it be a show, a podcast, a new selling platform, or anything hobby related, they can reach out to you and be part of what you're building, right? And and grow with you, right?
YouTuber.
Yeah, YouTuber.
I have 78 YouTube channels there. And there's even more that I'm not aware of. So there's so many.
You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Sports Card Nation has returned.
And speaking of YouTube, that's a good segue too, Gary, because you have your own YouTube channel, Vintage Baseball Card Packs. You mentioned I haven't seen it. Full
Yeah.
disclosure, I saw the website. Haven't seen the YouTube channel, but you told me you'll open up some old retro packs and see what you get on your channel, which I think is very cool. Right, it's a way to
Yeah.
kind of nostalgia, right? Go back, and we all remember if we're old enough, like I am, remember opening those packs when they were brand new, and it just kind of brings you back to our younger days, right? And
Yeah.
so talk a little bit, since I haven't seen it and it's
Yeah.
your channel, talk a little bit about your channel there.
Yeah, it's called Vintage Baseball Card Packs. And like I said, I got back into the hobby in late 2020, 2021, and YouTube didn't exist back when I was in the hobby before. And then I saw all these breakers on YouTube and people opening packs on the screen. And to be frank, initially I thought that's kind of odd. Why would someone spend time just watching someone else open packs of cards? But as you know, a lot of people are addicted to it, and I kind of get addicted to it too. And so I just wanted to experiment and see what I could do in that type of realm. And I like old vintage cards. And so I started going to shows and buying up old packs. By vintage, I'm talking about the 80s and stuff. I mean, finding packs in the 70s and 60s gets to be an expensive proposition. And you don't know whether you feel bad about opening these up and things. So all I do is just open them up and just show you what the cards look like. And I'm trying to do one video for like every year Topps, every year Fleer, every year Donruss. So then people get a flavor of what these cards look like, what you can pull. And it's interesting too, also now, when you pull a 1988 pack of Topps, to see all the old players and think, this guy was hot way back then, and he didn't turn out so well, and you remember these guys, when they're playing everything. So it's kind of enjoyable for myself.
Yeah, it's that nostalgia factor brings you back to our younger versions of ourselves. It's also great for, let's say, a newer collector, right, who wasn't around that time, to get to see kind of what cards and packs were like back then. They may be good with the current landscape, but have no idea sort of the history of the hobby. And I'm an advocate and ambassador, right? I try to educate and teach and learn myself as well. And so it's a great resource, right, to learn something maybe, in that case, hey, I wasn't around then. I want to see what this looked like. What's that at the end of the pack that's pink and cracked and dried, right? There used to be gum in there. Don't eat it now unless you like it just to disintegrate and you make a weird face as you taste, 35-year-old. I won't even call it gum. It's whatever you call it now. So, but it's a great way to sort of go back. The DeLorean isn't real, but it's a way to sort of go back into a hobby DeLorean and see what cards were like 35 years ago in the case of 88 Topps, as you mentioned. But depending on what year pack you're opening, it may even be further back. And I love doing that stuff. The next best thing to opening the pack yourself is to see it opened. And, it's again, another resource, right?
Yeah.
And kudos to you for sharing that, right? So many people have knowledge or have that opportunity, and they just sort of, again, to each their own, but maybe just keep it in-house where you're just trying to educate and be a free resource in this case. And something to be said about that. I mentioned, and getting to meet you at this year's National, wasn't your first. You told me you went to the 93 one, which is exactly 30 years ago. Talk about going to the 93 one and then attending the 2023 one. Just the differences from my first National, I think, was 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
So I kind of know it in its form that it is still kind of like today. But, for someone that's never been to the National during the 90s, and I count myself obviously in that group, the difference between what you saw in 1993 in what you saw in 2023, besides obviously more collectors or more hobbyists?
Yeah, actually, surprisingly, it was very similar. I'm trying to think back if it was 1993 or 1994, but the year I went, it was actually in Chicago, just like it is now. It was downtown Chicago. It was at McCormick Place at the convention center there, as opposed to Rosemont. And it's similar in the sense that you had all the concrete and all the booths set up, and you walk around, and a lot of people looking at the tables and things like that. In that sense, a lot hasn't changed. But on the other hand, what's changed also is at that era was the end of the junk wax era. You know, people thought that they were going to get rich and they were going to send their kids to college by buying all this 1990, 1991, 1992 wax packs, everything like that. And so it was
Todd Van Poppel and Brian Taylor are all my kids are going to college on for 4 years each, right? I kid, but I chuckle because I lived through that. I lived through those days. So exactly.
How about do you remember Chris Sabo of the Reds?
Chris Sabo, I love Chris Sabo with the big goggles and
yes.
Not a big guy, but he could bonk some home runs out. Known for those spectacles, and the Reds were even good during that time period. As well.
Yeah, I bought like a 50-card lot of them for each like 10 cents a piece and spent, $15, $20 and thought all these Chris Sabos instead of 15 cents a piece, that one day they'll be worth $5 a piece,
Yeah.
So
no such luck.
So it shows, the National from then to now, it's basically the same thing, to me at least. I mean, now you have a lot more corporate booths and things like that, and it's a plus and minus. Some people like it to stay the same, and some people think it should be modernized. So I think there's both sides of the coin there. What should happen to the National?
Yeah, it definitely has, and this is without me being an attendee during the 90s. It definitely has a more of a corporate presence. Everyone that I know that's been to most of them, was attested to that. I call it the Super Bowl of the hobby, Giri. We circle that week every year. It's around the same time. And the kind of good thing is it's really the same week minus a couple day or two, depending on the calendar. It's nice to tell an employer like, hey, this around this week every year, this is something I pretty much do. Like I'll be needing this week off. For me, in the teaching profession, it's during summer school, which I'm thankful for. Not that summer school is not important, but it's a little bit of a different vibe than the regular school year. So it's easier for me to take 3, 4, 5 days off during summer school than it would have been, during the regular school year itself. So it works out. I've been in the teaching profession for about 3 years. Prior to that, when I went to my first national, I wasn't in the teaching profession. As a matter of fact, I went to 2 nationals before I was in the teaching profession, and it really was a pain in the butt to get those days off to attend with the job I had at the time. And now it's a lot easier of a task, almost no hassle whatsoever at all. So, but it's nice that it's sort of that same week. You attended this year. Now with the site and your and your YouTube, is going to the National going to be like a yearly trek for you? Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, yearly or every other year, because I'm fortunate and blessed to live in the suburbs of Chicago. So I like literally 20 minutes away from Rosemont Convention Center. So definitely every time it's in Chicago, I'll be there. And then I'll see about traveling the other years.
Yeah, well, look, I think you're going to be in luck, because I think Chicago is literally most of the dealers' favorite venue.
Yeah,
it's widely acclaimed as attendees, most attendees' favorite locale. So I think you're going to have plenty of opportunities being in Chicago to get to the National. I guess I'll put you on the spot. It's in Cleveland this year coming up in 24. Are you planning to go to Cleveland? Is that trip manageable for you?
Yeah, it's manageable. I'm like 50-50 right now. I grew up in Ohio, so I like Ohio and everything like that. And Cleveland's just a 4 or 5 hour drive over there. So yeah, it would be great to go next year in 2024.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to see you. For me, see, when it's in Chicago, and Chicago's a great city, it's a great venue, like you said, with the Rosemont. But for me to go to Chicago, I have to fly in. It's too long
Yeah.
of a drive. I'm kind of liking it being in Cleveland this year because it's a 5 hour and 10-minute drive for me. So I'll be God willing, I'll be definitely driving in. We'll have my car.
Yeah.
And so that will be nice. Anytime I can drive, right? Anytime you can drive somewhere, you can bring more stuff. You can bring, in support of the show, whether it be T-shirts. And, when you fly, you can check only so much stuff onto the plane. And so you're sort of limited in what you can bring. When you drive, it sort of opens up more possibilities. When I was in AC a couple years ago, I was able to bring more stuff because I drove, and now with Cleveland, Chicago, I have to bring less stuff and fly. So I've never been to Cleveland, period, for any event. So I'm going to check out the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the first time. So I'm going to make a whole week of it, a whole trip, check out the hall, maybe catch we'll see what the Indian schedule looks like during the National, if they're playing at home. Maybe catch. I've been to quite a bit of the Major League stadiums, never been the Cleveland Stadium, so hopefully add that to the itinerary. And then, that's the nice thing about the Nationals. There's plenty of stuff to do even after the show is over, whether that's go to dinner with friends and acquaintances, go to a sporting event, sometimes even concerts are in town at the same time the National is. So looking forward to Cleveland, and the fact that I'll have my own vehicle there to get to those venues and events makes it a little bit easier rather than rely on public transportation. I'm a New York City kid, so it doesn't overwhelm me, but anytime you can jump into your own vehicle and get somewhere, it's obviously a lot convenient than to rely on public transportation. So I'm looking forward to Cleveland just on that aspect alone. I know you said it's 50-50. I'm hoping that becomes 100-0 in favor of for you when the time comes, and get to talk to you in person again as well.
Well, it's a 5 hour drive for me too. Same 5 hour drive. So now I have no excuse. If you're driving,
hey, listen. I don't like, the older I get, Gary, the less I like to drive. Like my stamina is getting worse each year. So if I can do it, you can do it. I sound like Rocky at the end of Rocky IV. If I can do it, you can do it. But it's nice to be able to. I think 5 to 8 hours. I think I would drive to. You get past the 8 hour mark, it gets a little trickier. Although you can, you hear people cut. Even I've had people like my friend Danny Black drove from Baltimore to Chicago. He kind of stopped halfway, got a hotel room, got some sleep, and then made the rest of the trip. So even on the longer trips, I guess if you break it up and you have that time in your schedule to do that, it still works. That's a lot of driving for me. Kudos to him for being able to do that. I don't know if I could pull that one off the older I get here. But 5 hours, definitely still doable at this point. And so I'll be driving, if all goes as planned, I'll be driving to Cleveland.
Excellent.
Well, Gary, I appreciate you coming on and sharing what you're doing. I think it's important. It's a great resource. I advise everyone to check out waxopolis.com. If someone who's been in the hobby as long as I have can get stuff from it, everyone can. It's a great resource for no matter what you're almost looking for hobby-wise. Give out all that stuff, socials, anything you want to share, the website, even though I said it. Say it again, your YouTube channel and all that good stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for the kind words. It's been great to talk to you. Yeah, so like you said, the website is waxopolis.com. You can go right to it. And then if you want to submit any new sites, there's a form on the website where you can tell me about things that I don't know about, YouTube content creators, any companies, any local card shops, things like that. Or feel free to send an email to suggestions@waxopolis.com, suggestions@waxopolis.com, or send me an email, Giri, Giri, @waxopolis.com. And then I'm on Twitter, Waxopolis there too. So check out any of those ways. Just get a hold of me, and I'd love to collaborate with more people and, figure out how to make this site better and make it a nice resource for everyone. So anything to make it better would be great.
Well, it's already very good. I'm not just saying that. I've been there on more than one occasion and clicked a lot of the links and you can lose a lot of time too. Like you check here, I don't know about this site. Let me see what they're about, right? And then it's 3 hours later, and you're like, hey, that was cool, but I lost 3 hours there. Well, so it's great what you're doing. I think it's important to have that sort of, again, all in one spot rather than to have to keep typing in stuff to get redirected. That's a nice thing. It's easy to bookmark. In 2023, it's easy to bookmark a page, click on the link, go to the page, and then everything is there on one page that you potentially need. People like convenience in 2023, 2024 here. And you've made it a lot easier to me to navigate, and I think others will find the same.
Yeah, there's so many great people in the hobby, so many people and companies out there in the hobby, and unfortunately, it's hard to hear of them all. There's a small hobby supply company that makes some great card protectors or something, and you might not know about them. There's YouTubers, there's podcasters, there's everyone out there, breakers, and would be great to get exposure for everyone.
Well, you're doing a great job. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk again.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you to Giri for letting us know all about waxopolis.com. Check that site out. It's growing literally as we speak, and I've gotten to know Giri a little bit. He's a dedicated gentleman, so I look for major improvements as time goes on with this site. It's already great, so check that out as well. We're going to hear from our Hobby is the People announcer, come back with some closing thoughts, and we'll wrap up this episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Hey everyone, this is Alex here from Relics Cards and Collectibles in Toronto, representing the Relics squad. I just want to remind everyone, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
That's a wrap for this week. Huge thanks to you, the listeners out there, because without you, there is no us. If you like the show, we truly appreciate positive reviews. Big ups to our great guests who drive the show and our awesome sponsors who make it all possible. Sports Card Nation will be back next week, but don't forget to catch either Hobby Quick Hits or Card Mentions coming up on Monday. I'll leave you with this. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. Remember, the hobby is the people.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
Hobby News Daily is your homepage of the hobby, providing original writing, exclusive gem rate data, a daily morning minute podcast, and some of the best content creators in the hobby. Remember, hobbynewsdaily.com and @hobbynewsdaily on social. Happy collecting!